All right.
And
Recording
we'll
started.
get started. So thank you everybody that's joining us again. If this is your first time, we thank you for joining us. We like to start with kind of an explanation of who we are and what we're doing here today, what we're talking about. And then for this call, we're going to have a few updates that we're going to go over relating to the news from last month, as well as some process updates. And so we're really glad that you all are here. The most important thing, and you'll hear me say it several times, is to please submit questions. The most valuable time that we have here today is always when we get the opportunity to answer people's questions. So if you move your mouse around or look at the top of the bottom of your screen, you should see a little black bar, and that has a Q&A icon that you can click on. And at any point in time, feel free to put in a question. If we answer that question during the call, one of us will go ahead and send you a little note saying that, you know, the information is something we just talked about, or we'll try to catch it while we're saying it. At the end, we'll have time to go through everybody's questions and have opportunities to ask more. So with that, I'm going to advance our slides, go over our agenda. The main thing we want to do today is give you guys an update on a lot of changes that are going on with this project. So we're going to start by just discussing VATI, what VATI is, who DHCD is, and to a certain extent, who we are and what we're doing. We're going to follow up on last month's meeting, as well as give you guys updates on the specific project areas. And then we're going to move into a time where we're going to let representatives from Brightspeed talk and share about the changes that they're implementing to make this process smoother. Joining us on the line today is Rich Schulman. He's the new Virginia Government Affairs Director, and that's a new position. That's a position that did not exist during the Lumen days, and he was brought on in part to help us with this project. And so we're really excited to have him join the call. We've also got Heather Lee, who you guys might recall from prior calls, and Nancy Devaney, who has also joined us on several of the other calls. And then, of course, we are going to have our Q&A. As I mentioned, throughout the call, you can drop questions into the Q&A function, which you can find in the bar either at the top or the bottom of your screen. What are we talking about today? We are talking about a Virginia Telecommunications Initiative project. It's our VATI 21 project. It is VATI is a mechanism for the Commonwealth to direct state and federal funds towards broadband expansion projects. So in the case of this project, this was state dollars that were directed in an application was put in actually in 2020 and awarded that year. And yes, it's 2022 now, but that is sort of the speed of government is kind of the way it all plays out. And so this project was, it was initially put together in early 2021, awarded in December of 2021, and construction began actually about a year ago. Next month, we'll have we'll have been doing these webinars for an entire year. This is our 12th webinar. So many of you have joined us for all of these, and that's great. The DHCD VATI program is a public-private partnership. That means that our body that we represent, the Albemarle Broadband Authority, was actually the primary applicant for this program. And they did it in partnership with, at the time, CenturyLink, now Brightspeed. The total funding from the state is $2.3 million. And that's for a project area that involves over 1,600 new passings. A passing is a location that can be served by fiber. And so 1,600 locations in Albemarle County that, as a result of this project, are going to have access to fiber. We already have crested 500. Obviously, that means we've got 1,000 to go, a little more than 1,000 to go. And that is a big reason why we're all here, is to find out what we're going to do to make it to that next 1,000. Our office, the Broadband Accessibility and Affordability Office, we are the administrators for the Broadband Authority, for ABA. as a result, we are the day-to-day administrators for this project. One of the key roles that we play is serving as the public liaisons for this project. We take resident concerns and we bring them before Brightspeed, before the Broadband Authority, and before the Department of Housing and Community Development. That's DHCD. So you'll hear me say this many times on this call. If you haven't, if this is your first time, you're gonna get tired of me saying it. But if at any point in time you have very particular concerns that are specific to your circumstance, feel free always to email us at baao@albemarle.org. You'll get Mike and I, and we will reach out to whoever the right party is, whether it's at Brightspeed or the Broadband Authority or at DHCD, to try to get you answers to your questions and to help you with whatever issue might come up. We're not just an intermediary. What our role is to do a certain amount of engagement. So talking to you guys to get information that we need to answer your questions, but also making sure that we're metering out what information needs to be shared where. And sometimes people hear that and they think, oh, so you're trying to hide stuff. We're interested in getting you the answers that we can get you. And I mention that because sometimes people want information that we don't have and that we don't need to have and that we don't want to have, because it's not information that is going to be helpful towards the completion of the project. And sometimes the information is actually protected. So for instance, if you really want to know exactly what kind of equipment is inside that box that you see on the corner of your neighborhood, that information is actually proprietary for Brightspeed. And so we're not going to share that. We're also not going to pass that question on to Brightspeed because we know what the answer is going to be. Another thing to remember when it comes to asking questions in this venue is if it's a very particular question associated with your circumstance, we prefer that you keep that to our email address at baao@albemarle.org. Our goal here is to have questions answered that are generalizable. So if you do, if you've got a burning question and it's something that others might be experiencing, absolutely feel free to ask it. We might not ask it the way that you asked it. We might ask it in a way that will allow it to apply to others who might be in your same circumstance. But with that, we're going to move on to our follow-up. So since the last webinar, DHCD has approved the request for extension that our office submitted last month. So this project officially has been extended to March 31st of 2023. That gives Brightspeed enough time to get to those next 1,000 passings. And this reflects the delays that are somewhat typical of a construction project. We like to think that, internet is really high-tech stuff. But before you get to the high-tech stuff, what you really get down to is a construction project, an infrastructure project, a lot of digging, a lot of drilling, a lot of breaking through rock, and a lot of heavy equipment. And so just like other construction projects can face different barriers, this project has faced lots and lots of challenges, but this extension is going to help get this project across the line. We also last month talked about a letter of finding that was sent by DHCD to the Broadband Authority regarding this project to review the two outstanding issues that the letter of finding asked to be addressed, whereas a lack of full and transparent communications, as well as residential installations without regard to homeowners' property. We asked last month that if anybody has experienced any of these things and they hadn't reached out to us yet, to go ahead and do so. And that was really helpful. A lot of you mentioned different issues that you experienced. We want to just repeat that even though as you guys will hear, the response to the letter of finding was completed and accepted, we still want to hear from you. So if you have had an issue with communication, in particular an installation that was missed, and you haven't reached out to us before, feel free to reach out to us. If you noted that there was damage done to your property and it hasn't been remedied, reach out to us and we'll do our best to make sure that we have the information we need to get your issue remedied. On October 26th, at the last Broadband Authority regular meeting, the Broadband Authority approved the corrective action plan and additional materials provided by Brightspeed. And what that meant is we passed it on to DHCD with a cover letter noting the work and the efforts that were made in preparing this corrective action plan. And the changes that were proposed were accepted by DHCD. And that represents an opportunity to improve the communications with this project, but also the process. And that's what we're excited to be able to share more on. Before we get to that, we do want to make some updates on the project areas. Taylor's Gap residents, you should have received word that you have launched. So you should have gotten an email from me this morning letting you know that you can go ahead and place your orders today. Rosemont, and I know that there's several of you from the Rosemont area on the line and have questions. If you go on today and you notice that you can place an order, please don't. Your area has not been completed. There is an issue with the system that allows people whose projects are not out of construction to place orders, but that could actually complicate things once your construction has ended in your project area. So please hold off. I sent out a list of road segments and roads that have officially are officially available to place orders where construction has been completed. If you didn't get a chance to see that email, you didn't see that street list, email us at baao@albemarle.org, and I will send you that list so that way you can know whether you're in the right project area and whether you can place your orders. If you have any doubt, just ask us first, and we will let you know. The Stony Point and Keswick areas are going to be broken out and they're going to be sequenced. And here's where the changes are going to come first. In the past, we've had specific dates pegged to each of these things. And as many of you who have been on these calls a lot have seen, a lot of times these dates slip. And they can slip a lot, and they can slip numerous times. Again, this is expected from construction projects. In order to avoid the disappointment of us setting a date and then hearing that the construction crews met some difficulties and weren't able to meet that date, what we're going to do moving forward is we're going to announce when an area, a project area tranche, has entered construction. And then we're going to, when we're ready, when Brightspeed is ready, they're going to provide the month that construction should be completed. A day before orders can be placed, we will reach out to you all through the emails that we have collected, which is how you guys have gotten here. We will reach out to you all to let you know that orders can be placed in your project area. So if you haven't, if somehow you got here because somebody forwarded you the email, email us at baao@albemarle.org. We will send you a link to a form that you can fill out, so that way you will get updates from us that will be essential to knowing when you can place orders. So if you're in the Stony Point and Keswick areas and you guys were hoping that you would get a specific list of when your project area is going to launch, we're not going to provide that. We can, however, tell you for a lot of in particular, the southern end of the Stony Point project area, you're in construction, which means you're closer than ever. And we're going to work with Brightspeed to get you the information that you need to know when to place orders as soon as we have it. And with that, I'm going to introduce Rich Schulman. We're actually going to turn the slides off for a little bit and let Rich introduce himself and talk about some of the work that was put into the CAP, some of the changes, some of the reasons for the changes. And then we're going to move into discussion on the installation process. If you've been here before, we usually have a section on the ordering process. I know many of you are going to have specific questions about that. If you have a very specific question about the ordering process, go ahead and throw it in the Q&A. We have the slides loaded up for the ordering process, but we're not going to go through that because we want to make sure we have as much time as possible for Q&A. If you want to see the ordering process under Brightspeed, it hasn't changed a whole lot. You can go back to last month's webinar. You can even just look at the slides and it walks you through it. And we'll post these slides, which again have those same slides ready to go so that you can look at that. Or feel free to email us and ask any other questions that way. So with that, Rich, how about you introduce yourself?
Thank you so much. Well, Well, glad to see. I think I see 52 participants. I'm glad to see so many folks have logged in. Glad to be here. I am new to all of you, but I'm not new to broadband. As you can tell by the color of my hair, I've been around a while. Just want to give you a little background so that you kind of understand, all right, who's this new face and what's he going to be able to do for us here. I first did a career in the Marine Corps and then did a career working in telecom. I actually retired from CenturyLink a few years ago in 2020. When I left, I had responsibility for 12 states, including Virginia, and I just had 2 people working on my team. So I was very, very busy, and it was hard to dedicate much time to Virginia when I had a lot of other states that I was responsible for. But while I was with CenturyLink and prior companies, I actually worked on a number of Virginia broadband grant programs, even programs before VATI, and was part of the development of the VATI program in the state code and the development of the regulations that we're now working, and been involved in them for a number of years now. I actually worked with Mike Culp on several of those initial VATI projects when the program first started. So we've spent a lot of time together as well. And in the last couple of years, I've run an association of the smaller telecom companies in Virginia, the real small guys, and to help them as they maneuver working with the State Corporation Commission and with DHCD on broadband issues as well. So like I said, I'm new to you. And kind of new to Albemarle, although I've spent a lot of time out your way, but I'm certainly not new to Virginia, and certainly not new to broadband grant programs, and glad to be with you. So you might ask, all right, so as happily retired twice, what would make me come back? So a couple of things happened. I got a call, and I think it's important to kind of give you a little background on this. I got a call a few months ago from the folks who I'd stayed friends with at Lumen, telling me that Lumen CenturyLink, telling me what was about to happen, and that Brightspeed was actually going to be looking to invest people and money in Virginia, and asked me if I would be interested in coming back for something like that. To be honest with you, when I had 12 states, I was not a particularly happy person. I didn't have enough time and resources to devote to Virginia, which is my home state. And so I asked, if I come back, what area am I going to have? And they said, oh, well, we want you just in Virginia, and we want you focusing primarily on Albemarle until we get this VATI project completed. And that was very tempting to me, something that I could work with. I'd known I'd worked with Mike before, and knew I had a good relationship there, and we could get some things done. So that's what's brought me back. And since I came back, I joined on October 10th. I have been working very, very long days and into the evenings on issues and trying to get us back on track as quickly as possible. And I enjoyed doing it, and enjoy thinking that I'm trying to make a difference to get our service out there faster and get you all folks hooked up as quickly as possible. So my role on the team is to work with the team. I will not be so much involved in individual issues. We've actually got folks that are currently doing that and doing a pretty good job of, when an individual issue comes up, somebody needs a line trenched. I've got somebody that's out there that can work on that to make sure that we've got somebody that's working with you. If there are hiccups in the system, I will get involved to move those along. But kind of what I've been doing, at least in these first few weeks, is to kind of identifying and implementing improvements that we can make in the process here, just in our program with you all, and especially in the area of citizen communications. So one of my first projects was this corrective action plan we talked about, and I enjoy it because it was a great opportunity for me to kind of say, okay, well, what are we doing wrong? And talking with, seeing a lot of your comments, and then, also talking with your team there on the ground with Mike and Jason to figure out where can we do communications better. Because what I think is, when the techs arrive at your house to do your install, from what I'm hearing from a number of folks, is people are very happy in general with the work that the techs are doing. So once they're there, you're in good shape. but our communications has not been good. And I will be the first to admit it. The communications has not been good in the rest of the process, the ordering process, when changes get made. And so one of my goals was to work with our team to see if we could find ways to streamline the process and to get communications better with you all. So you know what's coming, you know what parts you can participate in to help us out, and places where we actually need your input in order to make those right decisions. And that's how we came up with this corrective action plan, which you'll see that involves not only what we're going to do, but I want to specifically set out in that plan, what are the pieces where you can be involved. And then the idea is with this plan is I want to get this word out to as many folks as we can. We'll take the plan that you're going to see, we'll make it available in places where people can see it. We know we're going to probably need to make some tweaks to it along the way, but I think it's a much better plan. And if you know up front what steps and what's coming and what to expect and how they're the places where you can intervene to do something, I think you will be much happier with us as we're going through the process. Now, the one complication in all this has been this transition from CenturyLink Lumen to Brightspeed. I mean, if this had just been us all along, it'd probably be somewhat easier, but that change in the company is a major change. This wasn't just a rebranding, like when if you saw CenturyLink change to Lumen, that was really just a rebranding name. This is a completely new company. And we've got some existing systems that we have been using that we're using temporarily, but we know they're not good systems. They're not what we want to be using. So we're going to be transitioning into better systems that are better for us. So the transition allows us to do some better things. We're a smaller company now. We're just 20 states now instead of a global company. And the other thing is our focus, the Brightspeed focus, is on the 20 areas that are mostly rural. You all are probably one of the most urban, so-called urban places that we serve, and you're certainly not. I wouldn't call you guys urban like Northern Virginia or downtown Richmond, but for the most part, the 20 states that we operate in are very much like we have it here in Virginia. They've got some bigger areas like a Charlottesville, Albemarle County, but they've got large areas that are very, very rural. So this new company focus is on rural areas. And we're not a global company. We're not worried about what's happening in the cell tower market in Argentina, for instance, which is something that CenturyLink Lumen was involved in. So it's a much better focus for us. So anyway, I hate to spend that long talking, but I think it's important to understand my background. I am absolutely 100% dedicated to working with you all here in Albemarle. I'm going to be taking a trip out there very soon to do a ride around to look at the project areas. I need to become more familiar with them. I'm not as familiar with the individual projects yet, but I want to look at the ones that are down the road, start to get very comfortable with them. And as we have individual issues, so I can address those better as well. I live here in Short Pump, just outside of Richmond. It's really easy for me to hop in the car, and 60 minutes later, I'm right there. And I've told the team there that I'm glad to do that. And so that's kind of my background.
Thanks for that, Rich. I'm a big believer when it comes to communications that we want to tell you what we're going to tell you, and then we want to tell it to you again. So I wanted to hit a couple of the top line items in terms of changes that are reflected in their corrective action plan. And I want to start with what can, starting now, because we're announcing it and that's what's going to be happening moving forward. Starting now, what can residents expect to see happen on the day of their installation, which they choose during their ordering process?
Let's see, Jason, do you want to do slides with this? Or you want me to just talk on this?
Let's talk on it real quick, and then we'll pull the slides up and sort of walk through piece by piece. But I wanted to highlight the changes to the installation day.
Yeah. So here's kind of in general terms, here is the big change. we have found that in the vast majority of cases, we can get you up and running on the day that we first come out there. So in the past, we've been doing these, they call them buried site checks, where somebody, you'll see a truck, you may or may not have gotten notice. You see a truck roll up and somebody coming out and looking around your property, and you're wondering what the heck is going on. We aren't doing that anymore. Going forward, the process is going to be, you'll have that install date, and in most situations, we will be able to lay a temp line for you on that first visit and actually get you installed and up and running when we are out there. So again, this gets rid of that buried site check and immediately gets you up and running. Now, there are going to be instances where, for whatever reason, and I'll hit some of these reasons for you just briefly, where that temp line is not going to work. You may be the kind of person, and I have friends like this, who mow their yard every other day, and they don't want a temp line hanging over their yard because it's going to impede them mowing their yard. And for them, that's more important than getting their broadband connection today. I get that. There are also going to be instances, maybe you've got an animal that you're afraid is going to chew up the line, and so you don't want that line there. Or maybe you think it's because of where it has to be, it's going to be a trip hazard and you don't want the line there. We get that. If you don't want the temp line installed on that day, we will get you scheduled and come back out, and we will do the buried check, or not the buried check. We will actually come out and do the installation and bury the line that day. Now, the advantage to that is because you have been out there on that visit when we were attempting to do the temp line, you will talk with the installer there, and we will know where that line needs to go, right? So that will save, that takes the place of that old buried site check. We'll know where that line needs to go. There are going to be other instances where, because of where the lines run, we know that we can't lay the line. So for instance, if it's going to go over a road, we obviously can't lay a temp there. We may also have the unfortunate situation where, in order to get to you, that line has got to cross your neighbor. And we're not going to lay a temp line across your neighbor's yard to get to your yard. Now, I say all of that because, I have been talking to the folks on the ground there, and they are telling us that those situations are not the usual way of doing things. And in most cases, they should be able to get that temp line to you immediately. Now, I know your next question. I don't want the temp line. When are you going to bury the temp line? All right. And so we will schedule to come back out and bury the temp line. You do not have to be there when we come back to bury that line. The line is on the ground. We know where it is. They're just coming back in to plow it into the ground for you. So you don't have to be there for that date. And you shouldn't have to be there. You're already up and running, right? You've got your service, you've had it. Now, I will admit, and I will be the first person to admit, we are not getting out and burying lines as quickly as we would like, and certainly not as quickly as you would like. So we have targets that we try to work at to get those. We know exactly how long it's taken us. We know it's taken us too long now. We are bringing in more crews. I wouldn't say daily, but I can tell you last week we brought in 2 more crews as we attempt to go in and improve those dates that we are trenching in. And then that brings in some other issues like private utilities, but I'm not gonna go down that road because Jason asked me to briefly describe it, but I want to give you an idea. That's what's going to happen on day one. Day one, your install date, if you're good with it and we don't see any impediments like a street we got to cross or anything else, you will have service on that install date immediately.
And that's the big thing that I think was worth hitting before we move on to a more detailed review of the changes. Is the biggest change is before there was kind of this, and we pressed CenturyLink about this in the past, but there was kind of this nebulous situation where you would place your order, you would choose your installation date, and for some people, and it's generally the people that we never heard from, that installation date was met and they were connected and their line was buried and they were happy. And the buried site check and the line burial and all of that happened without any incident. For a lot of people, unfortunately, that's not the experience that they had. The experience that they had was lack of clarity about what is happening today, lack of clarity about when their line is going to be buried, lack of clarity about what's going to happen on their installation date, and then an installation date that sometimes would just get missed. So the goal of this corrective action plan, it's focused on that installation phase, and we've talked about construction and installation. It's focused on that installation phase where there were a lot of communications errors. There were a lot of errors with making sure that everybody had the information that they needed. And on our part, I can say there was a lot of frustration on our part because it sometimes felt like there were shifting sands where we would hear one answer. We would not see that answer reflected in the execution. And then later we would hear a different answer. So we perfectly understand the frustration that some of you have felt. And we just want to echo it because we've been there too. We are confident that the changes, and especially the change to just take that buried site check out, to just devote the efforts towards getting temp lines out where it's appropriate and where the resident wants it. So that way your installation date is the day that you have internet, fiber internet. So we're really, really excited about that. We're gonna dive into a lot of these questions in a little bit, and I know a lot of people have questions about what they're going to experience with this new temp line. So we're going to talk about that, but first, and hopefully this will take care of some of that. We're just going to back up a little bit again. We're going to go to the corrective action plan. I'm not going to lie, these are not the prettiest slides in the world, but bear with us. Rich is going to help us walk through it, and we will. Sorry, sometimes sharing the screen is not as easy as we want it to be. Letting me share the slide that I want to share. My apologies, everybody. All right, let's just do it that way. All right, so the slides are back on. Again, Q&A is open. Feel free to drop your questions into there. And once we are done with this review, we will move to your all's questions. So Rich, can you read that part?
Yes, I can. Thanks.
Okay, perfect. So starting there at the top, work beginning in a project area. So I'm gonna just step in here. Part of this section, and this is the part of the section that was in the corrective action plan. This is the part that has changed just a little bit, and that's the discussion that we had earlier about future guidance. Again, we're not going to set a specific date for when your specific project area is going to launch. Sometime very soon, we're going to have a breakdown of project areas, and we're going to have status. You are in construction, you're not in construction. When you move into construction, we will update our website. If we have your email address, we'll send you an email update. We'll let you know, hey, you should be seeing paint kind of showing up on your roads. You should be seeing crews going around and doing stuff on the side of the road. So that's the one thing that's a little bit different than what's in the language here. But if you want to pick it up from there, Rich, just let me know when to move the slides.
That sounds great. Thanks, Jess. Appreciate it. So again, on that first one, so here's the thing we've noticed. I mean, it didn't take me very long to notice this, that the dates were moving. The dates were moving a lot, and so I don't want to dive too deeply into this, but here's the problem for us in the systems. Every time that a date goes up, a window opens up and people can get in and place orders and get install dates. Then those install dates aren't met because the construction hasn't been done. So that's the reason why we're going to close that door and not allow that to happen, so that you don't have that issue coming up. I know I looked at the participants here. I know we've got some folks from the Rosemont area. Unfortunately, you're kind of caught in that gap of people where we weren't able to close the door in time. And that's why Jason has said, please, don't get on there and try and place an order because I'm not sure well, I do know what screen you're going to see, and I don't want you checking a date that isn't going to be met. And then we've got the problem of getting you, trying to get you a new date and that. So, and I know there's some other, I know we've got some of our friends from Rosemont on here, and I know we've got some other issues there that we're working with you individually on, but for everyone else, the process is going to be, as Jason said, if you go on, you're not going to be able to place an order until we are ready to actually open the door for you to go ahead and place an order. We're going to get that word out and then get it up on the website. We also know that telling you, hey, starting now, today, at this very moment, you can order is not what you want either. You want a bit of heads up. I get that people want to be able to order service, be the first ones online. And so we'll give you as much notice as we can when we know that the process is going to be open and you're able to actually order the service. Ideally, we'd certainly like to do that the day before. I mean, if I know a couple of days from now that, construction is done today, we've got some things we got to do tomorrow, and that the next day you'll be on, we'll try and give you as much advance notice as I can so that you can be at your computer ready to press the button to submit your order and get the first installation date for out of your entire community. So anyway, that's the process that will happen up front, and the notice that you have up front. And I think that will keep us from having the issue of dates that are unrealistic and having to reschedule. As you'll see there, so again, on this chart, what we've tried to do is tell you what action is happening, what we're going to be doing, and then what you can expect on the right-hand side. So over there, I would suggest you check the OB site regularly, look for status updates, maybe check it at the end of each day. I think we're talking about maybe trying to, and I don't want to get too far in front of Jason and Mike, but maybe anything that's new, we highlight in red, or bold or something to kind of let you know, hey, there's been a change, and that you can easily see that when you go on to the website. And then once service becomes available, you'll be able to place your order. For the sake of time, I think we're going to spend a lot of time going through this today, so we'll spend less time on the ordering process. But for our next webinar, I know in the past that Nancy has gone through the ordering screens. We'd like to pick back up on that so that you're familiar with the process. But as you'll see there, what I've put down there for the resident customers, what happens when you place the order. You'll select your dates, and we'll take you through on the next time through those screens so you can see it. I made another update here that's in red because just to let you know, it's going to, we are saying on the website now, when you go on there, 3 hours and 20 minutes. I'm not sure where we come up with 3 hours and 20 minutes, but that's what we're saying is going to be the time for installation. So as you're thinking about that, when you pick your date in that window of opportunity, I think it's a 2-hour window, make sure that you got 3 hours and 20 minutes or 4 hours in there to be able to make sure that, you're going to be there for the installation. Now, but what if we can't meet the installation date? Something comes up and we can't make it. Our commitment is going to be that we are going to try and call you 3 times by telephone and 1 time by email to say, hey, we've run into a problem. We need to reschedule the date, and you need to contact us, and we'll reschedule in there. Hopefully that's not happening after we get this new process in place. Again, we're doing some transition work, but that's what we're striving to do, is get you that advance notice to reschedule. I know, I've sat here before waiting for the dryer repair guy to show up, and I get how frustrating it is when folks don't show up when they're supposed to show up. We all know that. Your techs on the ground know that, and they are not happy to know that we've had a commitment and we're not out there to do what we're supposed to do. So we're very, very aware of that, and one of our top priorities is to make sure that if something happens and we can't be there, I know you're not going to be happy, but if I were you and somebody doesn't show and we haven't told you we're not going to show, I'd be angry. I wouldn't just be disappointed, I'd be angry. And I think that's reasonable to expect you to be that way, and we need to fix that. All right, so moving down, and if you want to scroll down a bit on installation day, I kind of went through that a bit, but I would tell you, take a look at that section in there where we talk about resident customer, because those are the things that you will be doing on installation day. One of the notes in there is if you want an installation that's different than what we see, we're willing to work with you on that. And as long as it's kind of within the realm of, what's reasonable for us to do under what we currently are committed to do, I think you're going to find that folks will do that. You don't want the box in the front of the house, you want it on the back because of this, maybe that's an example. Now, if you want to do something radically different than what we had planned to do, and it's going to cost substantially more to do it, or there's a big difference in price, then I think we're going to have to be in a discussion about what is going to be the cost for us to do that alternate installation. And I have not heard that has been a problem resolving those kinds of things, but I know that's an issue for you, that you may want something that other than what we were planning to do. And we're able to talk about that with you. And then again, as I said, if you don't want that temp drop and have service that day, we understand that, and we just need to, we'll schedule in there another date to come out and do the permanent drop and get that in place for you because the temp doesn't work. All right, the next one is, what if we get there and you are not there? I don't think this happens very often. But if we get there and something's happened with, you have a sick child that you've had to take to the doctor on no notice, those things are going to happen too. If that happens, we're going to come out there, and then we're going to try and get back with you, and we're going to try and do that by telephone on 3 separate days. Now, we've added in one more piece to that we're going through the process now, but we are also going to leave some kind of notice for you. It's probably going to be a door hanger that's going to say, we were here. We missed being able to catch up with somebody. So, you need to call us back and reschedule your appointment. And again, we'll still do those calls and those 3 separate calls on 3 separate dates. But I think it's better if we can tell you right away, hey, we were here and you weren't. If you can call us back, that avoids us having to make those additional calls, and we can get you back on the schedule. The next one that's really big is the utilities being marked. So let me kind of just quickly run you through the process here. So we've put the temp in your yard. Now we need to come back and we need to put the permanent drop in, which has got to be trenched in. We are required under law to it's called submit a ticket. It's into the VA 811 system. A lot of people call it misutility. So we're required to call in that we're going to be trenching in the ground. Anytime that you move in the ground, you have to give the VA 811 system a call. And then what they do is they contact they know who is in the area for utilities. And I'm talking about public utilities, your gas, your gas, meaning, your gas system, your electric that comes from your electric provider. And they call each of those providers, and they have a certain period, it's 3 days, to come out and mark their facilities. We are not allowed to do anything until those facilities have been marked for good reason. You don't want to come in and cut a gas line, it'd be the most serious one. Okay. So again, those are the public utilities. So as soon as we have a good idea of when we're going to be coming out to do that trenching, we are going to be making that call to VA 811, and you will see people come out and put paint on the ground. Now, the big issue that it's not a big issue here where I live, but I understand it's an issue where you are, is a lot of you have private utilities. You might have your own private water line there. You may have your own electric facilities that are in the ground. Those marking of those facilities is not part of the VA 811 process. And those are things that you as landowners have to do yourself. So what we've put here in the plan is that, and you see over there on the right-hand side, again, trying to let you know where you play into the process here. If you have private utilities, the resident should have those facilities located and marked with flags no later than when VA 811 marks the public utilities, which is usually noted by paint marks on the property. So after we lay that temp, there's going to be a period of time, then the utility companies, their contractors will come out and mark the facilities. That's kind of your alert that it's time to mark your facilities. I mean, you could do it sooner. You could come out and put flags in your yard to kind of alert us. But when you see paint on the ground, that means it's going to happen fairly soon. And that's kind of like your last notice that you need to get out there and mark those facilities. Now, I put in there a little section as well, because I know that you all have been working this for the other projects, and that the office there has got an email you can go to for assistance in hiring a private contractor to come out and do that. And I know some of your communities have been really, really good about working together, hiring one locator to come out and locate private facilities for a group of you. And that's tremendous to save your costs as well. But I think that's a huge area, because I see some of these cuts happening, and I think we are not communicating with you all well enough to tell you, folks, when you see that paint on the ground, we're about to come in and trench. It's your responsibility to locate the private utilities that you have, and we're trying to give you as much notice as we can to go ahead and have that done. All right. Jason, you want to scroll down a bit? Am I doing okay on time, or should I be speeding up a bit?
You're doing great. I wanted
Okay.
to just pause here because obviously private locates is something that that we've spent a lot of time talking about, and that there's been lots of questions on. So I'm going to start with a question: is a standard well line something that we would have to be marked by flags? How is that typically done? The expectation from the beginning has always been private utilities are marked by the household. If you are absolutely confident, you know exactly where your well lines are, you know exactly how to get them marked. That is something that property owners can choose to do. The recommendation is to hire a contractor. What that contractor does with respects to something like a private well line is that well line also has a piece of Romex. It has some electrical cabling with it. And even if it didn't, even if you had some sort of magic estuary, some sort of canal, there's going to be in whatever whatever piping that you're going to use, even if it's plastic, there should be a ferrite core, something that will be picked up on a magnetometer. And so they will send somebody out and they will be able to scan the area, find your well line, and mark it. Virginia 811 does not mark well lines. They don't mark propane gas lines. They don't mark any sort of electric fences, lighting. If you've got a gate that's powered, the line that goes out to your gate to power it, that is not marked by 811. All that 811 is going to mark are telecommunications, municipal water and gas, and then your electrical provider's lines. So if you have additional electrical lines on your property, those aren't going to get marked. If you have a private well, septic fields, all of those things are expected to be marked by the utility, or I'm sorry, by the household, by the property owner. We've mentioned there are options for working as a community to get private utilities marked. I'm going to start by saying this part, and then I'm going to repeat it. If you're part of a HOA and your community is included in this project, have your HOA reach out to us, baao@albemarle.org. We can send some recommendations for companies that are willing to set up a joint contract. So one contract for everybody in the neighborhood. They're going really above and beyond to make sure that they have the information that they need to mark your utilities in an efficient way. So that way they're not sending trucks, every 30 minutes, but rather they can just get everybody done in sort of a comprehensive way. What they're going to do. So if you order a private utility markings yourself, often the companies charge a minimum amount of time, an hour, 2 hours, and they have an hourly rate. Your project might not take very long. One of the questions from Rosemont, I'm surprised it hasn't come up yet. Does this mean that we can just mark the area where our temp line is? So once your temp line is in, you know where the path is. So you don't need to have your entire property marked. You just need the path that your line is going to be going. So that means it might only take 10 minutes. The marking guy might come out with his little spray paint can and his magnetometer, and he might be gone in a few minutes. You don't want to pay an hour. You don't want to pay 2 hours for what ended up being a very short amount of work. So by working as a community, you can get a joint contract. And what's going to happen is, instead of, just having to pay for those 2 hours that didn't take 2 hours, the communities can work together to decide how much is each, what responsibility does everybody have of the total bill. Again, these utility contractors, the marking contractors, they're willing to work with you guys to sort of break it up into the appropriate chunks. So if you're in a HOA, reach out to us, and we can try to connect you with a company that might be available to help out. If you're doing this privately, if you're not going to be part of a community, maybe you've got some neighbors that are going to be involved in the project. You don't have a HOA, you can just work with your neighbors. And if that's not something that's an option, you can certainly reach out to us and we can give you recommendations for other utility contractors in the area that might be available to do the work. So a question on in Rosemont, the private utilities that cross roads have to be marked again. That one's a little bit trickier. I think it's going to be somewhat on a case-by-case basis, but the work that was done in the street, that work will soon have been completed, which means the route that your temp line is going to go, again, that's going to be determined on the day of your installation. And so if it is moving into your property, then you shouldn't, that means that it's not crossing the same area where the laterals went. So you should not need to mark that same path that you already marked. Rather, you should be in the position to just mark the path that your temp line is going to take. Obviously, it's going to be on a case-by-case basis. There might be instances where you're going to backtrack, in which case you might need to remark that whole area. But again, you're just marking the area with the temp line. We're going to touch on this one more time. We can touch on both of these actually. So in terms of the depth of the temp line, and Rich, I'm going to let you correct me when I say it the wrong way. What they do is something referred to as sewing. So instead of digging a big trench and then dropping that temporary line into the trench and then covering it back up, the machine is actually slicing into the ground, opening a small enough cavity for the temp line to drop in, driving the temp line in, and then as it closes, as the machine actually pulls itself out of the ground, the hole is closing with it. And so that is occurring at about 12 inches of depth. So if you have a geothermal line that is buried 4 or 5 feet deep, you still might want to have it marked. And that's just a prudence. But if you're confident that the path is going to go through a space where your geothermal line is well buried, then you can decide not to have it marked. But our recommendation is always just have somebody come out and mark your private utilities to avert any sort of disasters. As to flags, so the big reason to use flags, and I'll tell you, when we started this project in January, our first delay had a lot to do with the fact that there was snow on the ground when some of the Virginia 811 crews came by and marked the locations. And there was a 3-day delay because there was snow on the ground and the construction crews couldn't go out. And when the crews could come out, they discovered that the utility markers had marked the snow, which meant that it was gone. And so they had to actually delay one of our first project areas got delayed by a week because the marking contractors marked the snow, which melted. And so there were no longer any markings and they had to reschedule the ticket. So the reason that they recommend flags is in the instance where there's something that might be troublesome that might get in the way of those markings. So snow, leaves, if you've got tons and tons of leaves over that area, you might want to consider blowing them before the markers come, so that way they can mark the ground instead of the leaves. Snow, but also if there's for some reason a delay, and as Rich said, they're working to get more crews to do these line burials quicker. But if there's a delay and those markings fade, then you wouldn't want to be in a position where you have to order the markings again. Instead, you can ask the markers to do flags instead. And that way, the flags are a little bit more resilient. I will say, as Rich mentioned, if you're somebody that late into the fall, you're going to be running your mowers, be mindful of landscaping flags, of marking flags, and mowers. You would hate for one of those to get caught up and thrown out, but flags is the recommendation just for the resilience. They last a lot longer than the spray paint. And with that, we are going to go ahead. Rich, did I miss anything?
No, well, I was just going to add a couple of points just so folks understood this a little better. So
yep,
the folks that when we call in a ticket to VA 811, it's not our contractors that come out and mark those facilities. What happens is Virginia 811 contacts, like I forgot where the line is for you all, but I think some of your folks are Dominion areas and some are Appalachian Power. So Virginia 811 calls, for instance, Appalachian Power and says, there's a project that's happening. You need, this is your notice that you need to come out and mark. Appalachian Power probably doesn't have somebody that's inside their company that does it. They have a contractor that they hire. That person comes out and does the marking. So each company that has facilities is responsible for having their own contractors come out and mark the facilities. Now, under the law, if there's snow on the ground, they're supposed to be putting up flags. They're not supposed to be painting the snow because we all know snow melts. So if we see that happening again this time around, as we get into work that's done when it's snowing, we will put an end to that quickly by contacting the utility company that's doing the marking and telling them, no, you can't mark the snow. You got to use flags. So I just want to put that in there. Thanks.
Yep. And then one more just on the depth. The temp lines are sitting on the ground. So somebody asked, how deep are the temp lines? The temp line is actually sitting on the ground. And here, I actually don't mind backing up just a little bit to a question from earlier. With temp lines, do you have concerns about the line being in the woods, raccoons, deer, squirrels, chipmunks, bears? So, if construction has been happening in your area, you've seen out by the road these huge conduits, 3-4 inches around, sometimes a little smaller, that are getting buried into the side of the road. And then you'll see these big spools of them. Those are actually empty. And so you'll likely see later somebody come by with another spool of something, and they're blowing these tiny little strands, these delicate fiber optic cables through those big conduits. And it makes sense. The conduit protects the delicate fibers that are inside of there. The temp line that they're laying is not that delicate little strand. Instead, what you're going to see, it's likely going to be a bright orange. It is 1.5 inches, 2 inches across, and it's kind of squished. What it is it's actually a sheath. So it is a protective wrapping around that delicate piece. It's not as big or as bulky as a conduit, but it is something that's designed to be a little weathered. So it can, it should be able to withstand a short period of time exposed entirely to the elements. It shouldn't have an impact because of a rodent or other animal that might just idly, come by, likely learn quickly that it's not something they want to eat. And so they will likely pass on and they should not do any damage. In that incident, obviously report it to Brightspeed. If there are any issues following that, reach out to us. But that shouldn't be an issue. Another person asked about running them across a gravel driveway. This is where it gets a little bit, it's a little bit more of a gray area. Again, these are fairly ruggedized, sheathed products. They're intended to be kind of out in the elements. However, a gravel driveway has a lot of sharp points. And if it has to be out there for an extended period of time, that's an area where likely it's not going to be ideal to have it across that gravel driveway. So each case is going to be is going to be specific. During that installation appointment, you'll have the opportunity to discuss the path. If it has to go across a gravel driveway, to a certain extent, there might be a situation where the property owner has to accept the risk that there might be damage done that would then cause a delay or cause some issues with the installation. Crossing a gravel driveway isn't ideal, but it's also not a deal breaker. Anything else on that, Rich?
I don't know. You would think there'd be a standard answer, and I'm going to look to my other teammates to answer this because I haven't seen this question come up before. I think there's probably a standard answer as to what we'll do on a gravel driveway, but I'm not sure. And I will take that one back and ask that because if my teammates don't know the answer to that, I can probably get an answer to that as well.
All right, and then we're going to take a pause on Q&A so that way we can wrap up the process changes, and then we're going to come back. We've got lots and lots of good questions that are here. But I did see, Nancy, did you want to say something real quick?
Oh, sorry. No, I was agreeing with Rich that gravel driveway is something we'll have to take back and investigate.
Perfect.
Yeah, and I guess the question is that something that, is our standard procedure we will not lay, or is it something where a customer can have a choice as to whether they want to run the risk or not of having an outage when it gets cut? But I'll check on that and I will get back.
Great. So with that, we can, did we wrap up fiber burial here on this slide?
No, but I'll just hit that one real quickly because I think we've kind of hit some of that. So we have a contractor, at least for now, and that's why I use the word currently in there, because that's something we'd like to get to the point where we are doing this, but currently we have a contractor that comes in and does that drop. We're going to try to give a call ahead of time to let you know that we're coming there to do it. But there is no requirement that you are there because the temp's there. We know exactly where we're going. The only issue that I raised in there, if there's an access issue, we probably need to do some coordination there. If there's a lock gate that we have to get through or something like that. But in general, you're not there. You've had internet service running for, a couple of weeks and they're coming in and just burying the line in there. So.
Excellent. And then the last slide on this, it's got some really important stuff here.
Yeah. So this one, when that temp line gets put in, if you are there and you happen to see, because I've seen some of these where somebody came through and they did something with your landscaping, our crews are supposed to put things back in the shape they were when they got there. So ideally you come home, your temp line is gone. You probably can't even see where the trench was because it's not really a trench. It's a slit in the ground where we put that cable in. But there are going to be times when, and because we've seen it, where something gets damaged and you're concerned about it. If you are there when it happens and you see it, then you can talk to the folks that are on the crew there, because we, Brightspeed, are not going to pay our contractor for doing the job until they've done what they're supposed to do and put things back the way they're supposed to be. So there's a great incentive for the contractor to get done what they're supposed to do and fix things while they're right there instead of having to come back later on and do it. So to the degree you can, if you see a problem, go out to the contractor and say, hey guys, you damaged this or this, can you fix that? In cases where they can't fix it, or you find out later on that there's damages, you come home later that day and you see something that isn't right, there's a process there where you can call in and let us know. We will make an attempt to come in and fix it. If it's something that's within our ability to fix, we'll do that. If it's not within our ability to fix it for whatever reason, then we have a claims process that you can use, and the numbers are there where you can call, and we'll have somebody that you can file a claim for the damages and get reimbursed for the cost to have those things fixed. I haven't seen this happen very often, but just to cover everything, we want to make sure that you understand that process, and there's actually somebody that you can talk to. The last block there is comments and complaints. So I think we've been at this long enough that we've got a fairly good system in place so that if you've got a comment or a complaint, you send an email into that address and it gets into a system that processes it. Now, there's a lot of projects that are being done. There's lots of issues that come up here and there, a wide variety of issues. So I think it's best if you send that email in, we get it into the system and it goes into the regular process and we get those things resolved as quickly as we can. There are lots of emails that go, and I see them, that go back and forth all day long we've got an issue here, we've got a crew out fixing that, and that's what we do. So we will take care of those. Now, the thing I think we should say though is it always is best is if you can try at least make one good faith effort at trying to contact us to get it fixed. If you get put on hold or you do whatever, I understand that, and if then you can go straight in. But it really helps us is if you can make the call in. I know it's frustrating, but try to make that call in to us to see if we can get it fixed. We are adding, I mean, nationwide. I don't know what the numbers are in Virginia, but nationwide, we are adding 35% to our customer service reps, to our manpower. So we are trying as quickly as we can to get our manpower back up to where it should be. It was not good in the CenturyLink days, so that you are not on hold as long as you've been. You are talking to people who understand you. You are talking to people who actually know where Albemarle, Virginia is. So anyway, those are the things that we are working on improving. We're at 30 days in on the process now. So, give us a little time, but I can tell you, we've already hired a lot of people and things should be turning around soon, we hope. So anyway.
All right, we appreciate that. Like I said, we are not going to go over all these slides related to the ordering process. If you have specific questions, start by reviewing the slides that are already on the website. And you can also go back to last month and you can see the ordering process. We're gonna kick off our Q&A. We're gonna start with one that is related to that ordering process question. And it comes from Dan. For former CenturyLink customers, we have to log into our Brightspeed account through the CenturyLink website. When it comes time to order fiber through Brightspeed, how will that be handled if we aren't able to log into Brightspeed's website?
All right, on that one, I'm going to need help from Nancy and Heather, because I think you should be able to get in through the Brightspeed side. But again, I want to be careful because we've got the transition, but my understanding is anyone that was in the system before, that account information should have transferred over to the Brightspeed system. Nancy?
Yeah, it does say that you would use your Brightspeed credentials, but your CenturyLink credentials, but you would still be on the Brightspeed website. So you go to brightspeed.com, and if you have your account set up online, then you could go ahead and use the credentials you used as a CenturyLink customer until you're notified to do differently. And I don't believe anyone's been notified yet to do differently.
So the key there is that you should be able to today go to brightspeed.com and log in using your CenturyLink credentials. I will say, having walked somebody through it, sometimes you might see some mixed branding. Just bear with it, but you should be able to go to brightspeed.com, log in with your old CenturyLink credentials, and be able to access your account that way. If you try it out and you have any trouble, reach out to Brightspeed technical support, customer service. As Rich said, they've been trying to beef up that department to improve the situation. Reach out to them if you continue to have any trouble and you're worried because you've got, that you're going to be able to place your order soon. Reach out to us and we can provide an escalation. But you should be able to process these orders through brightspeed.com using, at present, your CenturyLink credentials. And another one that's touching on those circumstances when you can't do a temporary line, or you choose not to do a temporary line. So if one chooses not to employ a temp line, will the installer still install the ONT and the router inside the home, or will it require a second visit after the fiber drop?
The answer
I saw
is,
you nodding. Yep.
yeah, the answer is option 2. Yeah, if we can't do the temp line, they're not going to do anything on that first visit. They're just, well, actually, they are going to do one thing. They're going to work with you to get another date scheduled when they can come in and do the install. And that install will include both burying the drop line and doing the install of the equipment. We're not going to do a partial install that day.
And so they'll also work though to ensure that the customer is satisfied with the path that it's going to take and mark perhaps the path, or are they just going to discuss it at least?
I think at least discuss it, but I will check with that to be sure that, you know, those discussions. Well, I think what they're going to do there is they are not going to like put paint on the ground to mark where the temp would be. So what's going to happen, I think, is you're going to get, you know, when they come out to do the actual fiber install, you're going to have to be there at that point, and they're going to have to talk about where it's going to actually going to go.
And I'll take this one. Pam mentions that we're not doing unannounced buried site checks or anything of that sort, but a CenturyLink truck showed up at a neighbor's house yesterday, even though their appointment is a couple of weeks away. So 2 things on this. One, this is the announcement. So today's the day. Moving forward and starting with these Taylor's Gap installations, this is the process that we're going to see. Is no buried site check. The installation date that you choose is going to be the day that you have service based on a temp line. And then your line will get buried on a later date. If you choose not to, your line will get buried and installation completed on a later date that you decide together with the tech that comes out on your original installation date. So they're going to try to streamline this as much as possible. But that is the case for these orders moving forward. Where possible, Brightspeed is committed to sort of advancing this project with all of these matters sort of in hand. And so they're going to look for opportunities for any outstanding installations to implement this. But the expectation is it's for all of the orders that are moving forward now. So starting with this Taylor's Gap launch. We do have a number of people in the Taylor's Gap, Rosemont, and potentially other areas that have already placed their orders. As Rich mentioned, the prior system had this default that just kind of opened up the opportunity for people to place orders, even though construction had not yet been completed. Again, we've seen lots of questions associated with it. I think there are 2 things to mention about that. One is that Brightspeed is working to come up with a solution that isn't going to put anybody at the end of a line. They're going to work with us. I think the other thing to mention is if you're one of those people, if you, in whatever subdivision you live in, if you placed your order before you got an email from me saying you may now place your orders, email us. And you haven't gotten your installation completed, email us and let us know. So that way we can escalate all of those as a batch to Brightspeed and they can investigate and figure out what needs to be done. For the orders moving forward, there's going to be a plan to address them. We just need to know who it is, and then make sure that we've got that information to share with Brightspeed. Back up to the top here, what area constitutes the southern end of Stony Point? Is it south of Prophet Road? Rich, I know I have been bugging you for breakdowns of at least the sequencing for Stony Point and the Keswick builds. I guess the question we'll put out, can we expect this project to run south to north?
Okay, I don't know the answer to that question. I don't know the answer. I'll have to ask, although somebody else on the team may know the answer to that. Let's see.
I'm not, I don't, but Heather.
Heather, I think it's *9 if you want to unmute.
Looks like we're working with the engineers on those.
Okay.
And it's pending permits. And those permits are not final yet.
So there are a lot of factors that go into the ordering, the sequencing of these projects. Permits is one of them, and it's one that can sometimes be a hangup. Our office works with Brightspeed whenever there are permit issues to try to expedite. And we have the opportunity to work with DHCD to also help when VDOT has to be involved. We don't know the sequencing yet. Once we do, we will share it. But one of the things that we can say is that the work on Stony Point Road, it is ongoing. It is happening now. People are seeing trucks, seeing paint show up on their road. So it is in progress. Please bear with us, have patience as we await being able to at least share when construction has started in your particular project area. And then a question associated with ordering for later. And the question here is, I will be away the month of February. If Brightspeed sets up my install for that month, I'm in Rosemont, will I be able to contact them to schedule for when I return in March? So Mr. Friedman, when we launch your area, you'll be able to pick when your installation date will be. And if on that day, something gets in the way of doing a temp line, you'll be able to pick the day that they come back to complete your installation. And so you're not going to be in a position where you're not going to have, you're not going to be able to reschedule. You'll actually get to pre-schedule. You'll get to schedule it for when is convenient for you. And I'm going to throw this out there for some of you that maybe you're snowbirds, you've got your bags packed, you're about to head to Florida. If you're not going to be in the area, your ability to access this project, there's no deadline. So this project completes, the construction phase is completed in March, and we'll stop holding these webinars hopefully by then. But the service is still, you are still provisioned as long as certain conditions are met, you're provisioned. And so if you don't know whether you're on the list, reach out to us. If you're on the list, then this service will be available to you if you want to place your order on April 1st, 2023, if you want to place your order in October of 2023. The goal, the deadline of March is simply that's when construction needs to be completed. We're getting a lot of questions about how we can know more about where things are going to go in advance. And I'm gonna jump in on this one too, because we don't. So one of the things that is proprietary is the location of facilities. So somewhere in your neighborhood is what we call a GPON. It's a funny name, GPON. And inside that box is some equipment and a whole lot of fiber. And a lot of fiber comes into it and a lot of fiber goes out of it. And one of those strands of fiber that's coming out of it is going to be yours. We don't know which one is yours, which one you're going to be assigned to. We don't know which direction it's going to be coming from. So everybody finds that out on the day of your installation when the tech comes out to introduce himself, to work with you to figure out which route you're going to take, and then to lay your temp line. If you have to go under a driveway, then that's something that you'll discuss with them at the time. But that, as Rich said, based on the techs in the field that are doing this work, it isn't a common occurrence that you're not going to be able to get a temp line. So we will try to work with everybody as we prepare for that. We already got that one. From Mr. Evans over in Rosemont, it appears there are some residences where the nearest vault is a good distance from their home. Specifically, Branham Lane appears to have a vault quite a distance from the two homes on that street, making the installation run well over 650 feet. Where does the 650 feet of free installation begin? Rich?
I don't know the answer to that one, but let's see. Let's see if my other teammates do.
I can share what was previously discussed, and that's that the 650 feet begins at the nearest network facility. Now, it is going to feel at times like somebody gets punished because they live over here and the network facility is over there. there is a reality when these projects get prepared and funded, that there are going to be trade-offs for just based on the engineering, that some houses are going to be really close to the facilities and some houses aren't, especially when you're looking at circumstances where you have very large properties, and a limited number of properties along a given road. The math on that is such that you can't really expect to have thousands and thousands of dollars worth of equipment dedicated to just 2 customers, and that's not even mentioning all of the trenching that would need to happen to bring all of those facilities to be more proximal. The way that that Brightspeed has committed for the distribution of this network is 8 users per facility, and that is a fairly standard distribution, and it's the distribution that is appropriate in a generally rural setting. And so in a lot of cases, there are going to be people that are just going to be further away. As for when the 650 feet begins, like I said, it has always been described to us as the nearest network facility that is appropriate. So if individual homeowners from Branham Lane want to reach out, they want to ask specific questions, we can't answer absolute specifics about what their distance is until the day that the tech comes out, the installer comes out to do that work. So that might be a question to just save for installation day. Mr. Wheeler says, we watched crews come in and bury fiber in boxes throughout the neighborhood. We've watched lines being placed in boxes outside of cul-de-sacs with lines for each house rolled out for distance and then placed back into the box. What other construction should we? So I don't know which area you're coming from, Mr. Wheeler. Again, we're going to put out new guidance that just states when your area has begun construction and when your area can place orders, which will indicate that construction has ended. When you think about a project area, don't think about it just your road, or even necessarily just your neighborhood. So your 100 or 120 closest neighbors. It could be 4, 5, 6, 10 neighborhoods. It could be smaller than that. It could be much larger than that. A lot of it has to do, again, with the engineering breakdowns. Before the construction phase starts, I mentioned this last month, there are 3 phases. And before the installation phase, before the construction phase, is the engineering phase. And the engineering phase is when some really talented network designers are actually pulling up GIS maps, and they're measuring out how much conduit and how much everything is going to be needed, and figuring out what the distribution of the facilities are going to be. And so all of that is happening well in advance. And then construction starts. And they're the ones that sort of break down the geographies into chunks, so that those chunks can be activated all at once. So rather than have this road and this block activated, they're going to activate a whole bunch of areas all at once. So the end of construction in your area, that might be a lot more than just your neighborhood. It could be several neighborhoods. And like I said, we're going to work on a sequence that we can share, a breakdown of what those project areas are going to be. So that way people just know, like, oh, I'm going to be in this project area, I'm going to be in that project area. But we're not going to have detailed timelines for when you're going to launch. This is a good one for you, Rich. Can you run the permanent cable, which to be clear, the temp line is the permanent line. They're not swapping out the lines. They're just taking that temporarily sheathed bright orange line, and they're just shoving it in the ground 12 inches, so that way it's protected. Can you run it over a drain field? I assume we're talking about a septic field.
Oh, I don't know the answer to that one. I can check on that.
Rich, we can't hear you.
I'm unmuted, so I should be able to hear me. Nancy says she can hear me.
Yeah, I can hear you.
I got him too. Yeah.
We may have lost Rich's
No.
audio.
It's Jason.
Nancy,
Jason,
do you know? Actually, am I the only one that can't hear?
Right.
Yeah, Jason, we can hear.
Gotcha. Somehow I have lost my audio. So let me
I can take over.
try to diagnose that.
So Rich, you got that one.
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that. That one's going to be a question for our operations team. I don't know where that line is between what things will put a drop over, like we talked about gravel driveway. Will we put it over a drain field? I don't know the answer to that, but let me find out.
Depends
And
on- yeah.
on the same lines, can you go under a paved driveway with fiber?
Well, that we actually can do. We will bore those underneath the driveway. Yep, those I know we can do because that's the only way you're going to get across the driveway.
Right. And those are instances where a temp line might not be appropriate. And so again, for those specific, am I going to have a temp line? Am I going to not have a temp line? Please wait until installation day, and your installation tech will walk you through your options and recommendations and come to that determination. Question about Taylor's Mountain Farm Lane. So most likely most of us won't have a temp line. So how does the scheduling work in that case? So I think we're going to address one thing first, two things here. The first one is just because you have a gravel driveway, does that mean you absolutely can't have a temp line? So we mentioned, we're going to get some clarity on that from Rich's team. But the other thing is your line isn't necessarily always running through your driveway. It might run alongside your driveway. It might run in a completely different direction. You might not even realize that there's a network facility 350 feet behind your house. It might be coming from a different direction. So depending on the direction of the network facility and what path the engineers have already determined, what direction the engineers have already determined this is going to be coming, that will have input. There's really no need to just write it off and say like, oh, this whole area is going to be because this whole area has gravel driveways. There's no way for a temp line. It really is in the moment on that day, the installation tech's decision. In terms of scheduling the work, you will work with the installation tech on that day to schedule when it is most convenient to have your installation completed. So like we said, we've got some people that have placed orders. I'm gonna jump ahead and say, don't do anything drastic. Reach out to us, just email us, and we will escalate with Brightspeed to make sure that you have that your situation is taken care of properly. What I'm gonna recommend nobody do not cancel your order. Do not try to order again. Just if you've placed an order, and this is true, I'm crossing my fingers here. I hope that there's nobody from the Jones Mill area who somehow managed to place their order before they were allowed to and who is still without service. But whatever project area you're in, if you placed your order before you were supposed to, if you placed your order before you got an email from me, and if you don't have your installation yet, email us, bao@albemarle.org, and we will work with Brightspeed to figure out what's going on and what needs to happen. Thanks, Rich. Can you give a ballpark estimate of length of time for the cable to be buried? Weeks, months? I'm going to throw this one to you, Rich, but I know that you're going to say we don't know, hopefully weeks.
Yeah, no, that's exactly the right answer. I mean, we have targets because, the longer it's on there, the more chance there is for something to happen to it, right? So we don't want to keep that thing out there we want that thing to be buried as quickly as we possibly can. The targets are going to be a couple of weeks. We're probably at 30 days now. We may have some outliers that have somehow slipped through the cracks that are more than that. If you're one of those outliers and you've looked out there and it's been a long time, give the system a call in. And if you don't get something from them, contact our folks with the broadband office there, and we'll take a look at those individually. Again, we have no interest in having those temps sitting on the ground either. We'd rather get them buried as quickly as we can.
And I'll extend that to just say anybody in any project area, if you have any sort of temp line on your property that hasn't been taken care of and it's been a while, reach out to us and we will escalate it with Brightspeed. I'm gonna by requirement, I'm going to try to put this as nicely as I can. Sometimes when you have a really important message and you try to pass it on to the next guy, sometimes it gets jumbled. When you have tens of thousands of important messages that need to be passed on, sometimes a lot of them are going to get jumbled. So it's possible that you might have escalated this with us before. You might have reached out to us and said, when is this going to get taken care of? Reach out to us again. Following the Brightspeed transition, it can't hurt for us to just send another escalation, just send another reminder and say, hey, this is something that's still outstanding. Once the pedestals and lines are in your neighborhood, how soon will service follow? I'm going to throw this to you, Rich. I mentioned already, though, it might just not be your neighborhood. It could be several neighborhoods. And then the other thing that needs to happen before construction is over is a testing phase. Somebody actually needs to go to each of those pedestals, each of those boxes, and turn everything on and make sure that the data is actually flowing the way it's supposed to be flowing before anybody gives the thumb up to place orders. But in terms of that, Rich, how soon will service follow?
I'll give you an example. Is one of the projects that is under construction right now, and it's really close. As they were doing the testing, they found a section of, and it's a small section, but they found a small section of the fiber line had been damaged. So then they had to go in and replace that section. Well, in order to replace that section, you got to call back in a ticket to dig. So you call back in the ticket to dig, and if the other utilities that are in the area, even though we know where they are, we got to call it in, we got to wait for the paint. If they wait their 3 days to do it, we're waiting 3 days to put that new piece of fiber in to replace the piece that was already there, and then we're testing that. So that's the reason why all I can tell you is once you start to see construction, you know it's on the way and it's coming soon. But it would be a guesstimate to try to tell you how long after that. Are you talking months? No. Are you talking days? No. It's going to be somewhere in there, and I'm really uncomfortable trying to give you an expectation that I know could vary widely depending on what we find when we do it.
Yep. And that testing phase is important. That testing phase is the difference between everybody being happy when they all get lit up at the same time, and everybody being disappointed when some people get lit up and then they find out that they have to stop. Their service is going to get paused while an infrastructure problem has to get remedied. So we appreciate that testing phase. And again, if you have specific questions about timing in your area, reach out to us. But we have one last, and we are over time, but if anybody, 38 of you are still here. If anybody has any more questions, feel free to throw them in the Q&A. The last question that we have right now: what is installed inside our home, and what does it have to be connected to as far as wiring? Why can't? Okay, so we're gonna break this up in terms of what goes in the home. And again, we've covered these in the prior webinars. In terms of what goes in the home, they're going to be right off the bat 2 items. You're going to have what's known as an ONT. This is what the actual fiber strand is going to be connected to. It's going to need power, and that ONT takes the fiber signal, so it takes the light, it receives it, and it translates it to traditional Ethernet cable. So that way you can plug an IP device to it to access to gain access. The second thing is going to be what you're going to connect to that ONT, and that's going to be a gateway. That could be a gateway that you order from Brightspeed, or it could be something that you yourself have. You have one and you want to use it. That is up to you and to Brightspeed, but those are the 2 things that are essential. There might be an additional device associated, and I'm going to throw this to you because it's part of the next question, with VoIP service. The question that follows is, why can't I keep my current landline phone? I have a security system connected to it, and I'm not sure if that works with VoIP. I also have structured wiring inside my home with Ethernet running to all my living floors. Can fiber somehow be connected to that Ethernet so that my new Brightspeed modem can be installed on my second floor where my current modem is? So your structured wiring, if it's all working properly, your structured wiring can be part of your solution. Again, your installation tech on the day of your installation is going to be able to help you position everything that needs to happen. But if you already have structured wiring, there's no reason why that can't be reused. As to the question of landlines and service providers, security companies, security systems, and whatnot, I will say, Rich, it is with respect, our desire from a public safety standpoint, from the standpoint acknowledging that cell phone coverage in Albemarle County, especially in the rural areas, isn't where we want it to be. Our desire and our advocacy will always be for anybody that wants it to be able to keep a landline as a matter of public safety and being able to access 911. I know that puts you in a tough spot, Rich, because the question I'm going to throw to you is, why can't households that choose to keep their landline phones?
And well, I can tell you the answer, the short answer, and I hate to be short on it, but we're not going to maintain two systems. So the copper system will eventually go away. We all know it's got to go away. Some of the equipment that is attached to the copper networks is obsolete. So we're not going to maintain two systems, a fiber system and a copper system. So the copper system, the fiber system will take the place, and eventually eventually we'll reach a spot where everybody will be connected, hopefully by a fiber connection. And I'm looking forward to the day when we can that will not happen while I'm alive, but probably the day when we can shut off the copper network. It's not as reliable. The equipment is obsolete. There are a lot of the equipment is it's the manufacturers who make some of the equipment are gone. And so it's just a system that can't be maintained. And that's why we're not going to stick with trying to keep both systems running at the same time.
I think the same caller follows up with when the power is out, there will be no VoIP. We have discussed this part several times in the past. Our recommendation is also that anybody with VoIP service, anybody with fiber service, because fiber lines don't work like the old telephone lines that are powered. They're actually self-powered. That's why you could just, in the old days, you could just plug any old phone into the wall and it would start working, even when the power was out. Because of that, we do recommend a battery backup for all of your networking equipment. Obviously, many of you have installed generators, backup generators to your homes that might run off of propane or diesel fuel to be able to power your homes the rest of the time. You can plug your fiber equipment. You can plug your ONT and your gateway and any other devices that you need into your powered backup generator powered outlets to power that, to maintain VoIP service. So even when the power is out, if you can power your equipment, you can maintain VoIP service. Rich?
Yeah, I was just going to mention, first time I've used that, raise my hand, that actually works. People always talk about how the copper network is self-powered, and actually it's not self-powered. The power has to come from someplace because CenturyLink doesn't have power plants. So we don't actually power the system. The power that we get to run the network comes off of, Appalachian or Dominion power, wherever we are. So when their power goes down, our system also goes down unless we have a generator or a battery backup there. So that's the other piece is, when we talk about running a copper network, if you want to have that thing run all the time, you're going to have generators and battery backups for each of those systems as well. So just wanted to kind of make aware of that situation.
Yeah, and we appreciate that. And then again, this is a situation where we will continue to advocate what we advocate and hold the positions that we do that reflect the feelings and the sentiments of the residents, and also reflects the feelings and the sentiment of concern from our public safety officials and our leadership. So thank you for those questions. We do have one more coming in. How reliable is the voice service with major power interruptions? We often lose internet when power goes out, even if we have a generator. I guess the question there, how reliable, how much battery backup does your networking facilities have?
I don't know the answer to that question. I don't know if Nancy or Heather can weigh in on that. I can check on what the answer is to that, though.
Yeah, I don't know anymore what the, I mean, we used to have a standard generators and backup batteries that lasted, you know, the battery, it would switch to the battery backup, which I'm talking huge batteries, not D cell. That would last maybe 8 to 10 hours. And then we also could bring in generators that run off gas. So, you know, and it kind of varies from area to area, but, you know, I think we'd have to know for sure, maybe verify what's happening in Virginia, Rich, with the local ops team.
Yeah, and I think there's also, and again, I should know the answer, but I don't know it off the top of my head. But I mean, the VoIP services are, I use VoIP service here at my house. I know that there are requirements that are in place. I believe they're federal requirements that deal with because of 911 service. So let me check on that, and that's a great question to ask, though.
Yep. So Miss Kaplan, if you would email us baao@albemarle.org with that question, so that way we can follow up with you afterwards. So with that, we are way over time. I want to thank first all of the 33 people that have stayed on with us to the end, and everybody for joining these calls over the last year. This has been, I think, a really helpful. A helpful piece of this project is getting the feedback that we need from the residents themselves. We obviously want to thank Heather and Rich and Nancy for joining us. And with that, we are going to put an end. Any additional questions anybody has, baao@albemarle.org. Anything you'd like some follow-up on, feel free to reach out to us. And we look forward to getting you all connected as soon as we can. So thank you all.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jason. Good job, guys. Thanks a lot.
Bye.
All right.